So I'm going to talk today about what happens when you give a sperm collection on egg collection day. Hello, my name's Imogen and I'm Scientific Director at TasIVF. We prefer patients to produce their specimen collection here. It gives us some control over the temperature of the sample and the environment that it's in, and it also helps us because we can prepare the sample as soon as we can after the sample is produced. So we get better results that way. However, some people have difficulty in producing a sample on site because, you go from suddenly this being a really private, intimate moment with your partner to having to produce and invite all these scientists into your world to produce a baby. So we do have alternatives if that's the case. So people can collect at home. People bring the sample in and drop it at the lab for us to process. The other thing that can happen too is that unable to produce a specimen on the day, and if that happens we can also have a few options. If this is a potential issue, we can freeze the sample beforehand and have you bring that, and so that's already here on the day of egg collection. Or we can provide you with some Viagra or a special condom which allows you to produce a sample while having sex. Or we can, at the very sort of last resort, is to do a testicular biopsy, and so that's when we get a specimen straight from the testicle. You can go back and join your partner and take them home for the day, so the lab will take it from there. So what happens is we get the sample in, we do an identity check with you. So when you hand the sample to us, we'll do an ID check with our RO Witness software, which means that we will actually apply a barcode to the semen collection vessel, and then that barcode will follow that vessel all the way through the laboratory, and it will only allow that sample to be matched with your partner. And if it's matched with anybody else, we'll get a great big siren that says these partners shouldn't be on the same stage together. The lab will take the sample and we will actually remove or separate the sperm from the rest of the sample. So the rest is what we call seminal plasma. So we separate the sperm out by centrifuging it, so that's just spinning it really fast, and we get the sperm at the bottom of the tube, and then we throw the rest of the sample away. And then we just wash that sperm through some culture media and we resuspend it at the right concentration. So if we're doing IVF, we need between 1 and 5 million sperm per mil in order to fertilise the eggs. But if we're doing ICSI, which is when we inject a single sperm into the egg, we don't need nearly as many. We can do that with less than 1 million per mil, all the way down to 0.1 million per mil. And then in some cases we have so few sperm that it's sort of, we don't count them, it's just a plus sample or a plus sample. And in those ones it can take the scientist, a number of hours, depending on the number of sperm that there are in the sample, to inject the eggs with that sperm. For IVF, we add the sperm to the dish with the eggs, and then the sperm just go about and do their thing. We don't have to do anything more in the lab. We just mix the sperm and the eggs together, and then we leave them overnight. And the next day, that's when we'll look for fertilisation. With ICSI, we actually have to physically inject a sperm into an egg, and when that happens, that procedure can take quite a bit of time depending on how many eggs we have to inject, but we anticipate 2 to 3 minutes an egg for the injection. When you first come and have your fertility investigated by your fertility specialist, one of the key diagnostic tests that they will ask for is a semen analysis. And what we do in a semen analysis is we assess the sperm for a count, and we see, so just the number of sperm that you've got. Then we'll look at the motility, which is how well they are swimming, and we'll also look at morphology, which is how many abnormalities are there in the sperm that we see. And usually these are just structural order abnormalities. They're not DNA abnormalities. And the other thing is we look for antibodies to sperm. So sometimes during life and the rigours of life we have, there can be injury to the testicle, and that means that you can actually develop antibodies to your own sperm. And if that happens, it causes them to stick together, which means that they don't swim very well because they all clump together, and that creates some difficulty in fertilising their egg. So from that semen analysis, we can see if IVF or ICSI is going to be suitable to fertilise those eggs. So if you've got a count of less than 1 million, we would suggest that ICSI is going to be a great option for you, but sometimes we can actually increase the number of sperm that we have by the processes in the laboratory, which will mean that you can actually have IVF. So sometimes the fertility specialist will say, let's do IVF unless the lab tells us that we haven't been able to prepare the samples well enough to be able to make that possible. And in that case, we will convert it to ICSI. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this information useful. For more information about fertility, subscribe.